Good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 000048 of Live Live. Awesome guest this week. I finally get to turn the tables on him. I've been on Lance's Inside the Firm Monday Morning Coffee podcast a couple times, so I want to talk about that a little bit. But now I get to ask him all these questions. Lance Cayko is here from Boulder, Colorado. Architect, builder, developer, entrepreneur, thought leader, just like one of these really cool people. And I'm really excited to have you here, Lance.
Well, thanks for having me, Dave. Yeah, I've been hoping you'd reach out after I know you launched yours. I was like, eventually we'll be in touch. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Well, you know what's funny on that whole thing is I think so many people are waiting to be asked to be on people's shows. But the reason I got on shows is because I started asking people if I could be on their show. So if anybody out there ever wants to be on the show, please I don't know if you agree, but at least for Live Live, I love, more interesting people. A lot of the people I have on are people that I've known just throughout my career or even high school or elementary school, but then people that I've met in this world of podcasting, which I feel like really blew up during COVID a lot because we're all working from home and having conversations. Is that so? And let's back up and let's start with kind of the start of the Inside the Firm podcast. So that was originally you and your partner, Al, right?
Yeah. We started ours in 2017 because we hit sort of that magical 7-year milestone. And if you're an entrepreneur, you know what that means. It means you're like, I haven't failed. Now my chances of failure are diminishing every single year because all of a sudden I have a little bit more established network and referrals and public visibility and all that stuff. And Al and I were just really inspired by two other folks that I always got to give a shout out to, and that would be Enoch Sears and Mark LePage, Business of Architecture. And there's kind of the titans. I call them like the Joe Rogan and Adam Carolla, but architectural wise, and maybe not in that order. And Mark LePage with the Entre Architect community and his podcast. And I felt like we had something slightly different to offer, which is what we've always tried to do, is niche in a certain way. And ours was going to be, the tagline is how to grow, start, and run a business, or how to start, run, and grow a business. It's really actually tailored towards, even though we're architect, engineer, contractor, developer heavy in what we talk about, for us, it very much is still hey, here's how we did it in our little sector, our little niche. But it's the idea was to try to be inspiring and just lay bare everything that goes on during those first 7 years, and now continuing through. Now we're in year 17, so we're almost on I think 10 years strong podcasting, which is kind of insane. But to a younger generation that I think has been beat down by the media quite a bit. I hate the media. Basically millennials and Gen Z of like, hey, the American dream is dead. Like, just give up and go, government handout and vote for communism and all this stuff. It's like, no, the American dream is still alive and well. You just have to play your cards very carefully, especially as Gen Z, millennial, a little carefully too. It's like, we just weren't handed these aces that the boomers were after World War II when everything is decimated and you can go, just start a widget shop. Boy, you're just going to crush because there's no widget shops. Like, congratulations, you have a widget shop. You can sell it to bombed out Europe and stuff like that. So that was the primary thing. Is like we were inspired by those guys over there, and like, okay, we have an opportunity of like kind of recapping, and then selfishly, eventually, I want to write a book about the whole thing, and just kind of be that continual beacon of light for people of like, look, I didn't have any industry connections when I moved to Colorado. I got laid off within 9 months. I got no time to be able to do that. We had no money. I had $1,000, during that. And so that was the whole idea behind it. And then we brought on, so we started, it was just Al and I every Friday. We would sit down, make sure we talked, and we kind of pretended like it was day one when we started F9, when we first did episode 0. And then, sort of retold the history, and then got caught up to present day in 2017, which was coincidentally the same time we're going to start our first real estate development, put on the builder's hat, and then really become those serial entrepreneurs. And then, so we were able to tell real raw stories about that struggle and how to do it. And the coolest thing, Dave, has been beyond meeting folks like yourself, like-minded people, and not feeling so alone in trying to do that kind of stuff, is we'll get fan mail, sometimes hate mail. Hate mail's fun. But the fan mail, we get like email, or people have just walked up to the office.
I want to hear about the hate mail.
Yeah.
Just kidding. We'll save that for the end.
They go like, I quit my job today to start my own firm, or thank you for inspiring me, or I took the leap, I bought a piece of land, I'm going to do the development thing, or I diversified and started flipping some of our architecture projects into build projects. And it's just like life-changing stuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So, there's that whole component too. It's just been a really interesting journey. We're over 1 million downloads total now. And
wow.
Coming up on 1,000 episodes in 2020, at the end of 2027, I think is when we'll hit that. So it's just been crazy.
No, and that is awesome. And as a resource, and just to, kind of back up a little bit on your origin story. And I think a theme here, and it's going to start in the next couple Live Lives, or I think I have Tom Rozak on in a couple weeks, who's an architect developer. I had David Supple on earlier this season, who, architect builder, architects who build. He was an architect, and he's like, why am I drawing stuff that I don't know how to build? That doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's my favorite metaphor of his is like, it's like a chef writing a recipe, but he's never cooked. It didn't make any sense to him. And so I think, yeah, we're maybe a little bit on the fringe of the architectural community, because we talk about architects going beyond just selling pictures, right? We really need to, and shedding liability. And it's I could see it as being motivational for people to listen to the whole idea of like, all right, that's it. I'm quitting my job. I'm just going to go start building stuff. But what they have to understand is, yes, the first step is you have to decide you're going to do it, but it's really freaking hard, right?
Building's way harder than architecting.
It's so hard. Yeah. So I love to kind of talk about how you guys learned, because you worked for an architecture firm, and, in the great financial crisis.
Yeah.
Right. So everyone lost their jobs. How much experience did you guys have? Or was it ignorance is bliss? I know there's a lot to unpack there, but just when you guys started, would you say, all right, we're going to design some buildings for some people? How did it evolve?
Oh gosh, yeah, geez, experience-wise. Well, first of all, just to be very clear, Alex and I'm happy to say this publicly. I've said it many, many times, and so far nobody's came after us. Is we started unlicensed, and you can do that stuff. You can do that in many other states. So we said it many times in our show, but I'm saying that because that's how little experience we had practicing under other architects. So, like I lasted 9 months when I moved to Colorado in 2008, October 2008. Lasted 9 months. I feel like I got one of the last internships there was. And then the financial crisis hit, Great Recession, and I got laid off. Al spent a year under Daniel Libeskind in New York City. Incredible experience he had there. Prior to that, we both had internships throughout school. But definitely we didn't even have enough hours to be able to start taking our tests. That doesn't mean we didn't have the lofty, the goal of like, oh yeah, why would we have all this education, part of the experience ready to, and eventually become licensed architects. So we had to be very careful about navigating how we presented ourselves. So we can only present ourselves as designers. So all of a sudden, not only did we, have no money, there's very little work to go after and no industry connections. We also are pigeonholed to what we can do, but that's okay. So it was good. I felt like it was a very good challenge. It's like, it's kind of, people ask me all the time, they go, geez, Lance, you have all these companies, you seem like a successful guy. And I want to be like you. How do I, what should when's the best time to start a business? And I go, during a Great Recession or a Great Depression. And when I'm playing with that and going with that is like, man, if I take my own advice, which we did, and that's when you started, it's like, well, and then they go, why? And I go, you'll never be hungrier. You'll never have more motivation. if you can navigate through that and run a successful business that at least has like 1% profitability through those first couple years, the economy is going to take off at some point. And if you can do that, boy, world's your oyster. And how you'll have this fine-tuned machine that operates in that way. I think the ignorance was bliss was actually very helpful for us. Because one of the things we did is we went, okay, if we have a shortfall of built work to convince clients, those first clients, to hire us and design their, essentially it was just residential stuff at that point, because that's all we could legally practice. And then very small commercial, very small industrial. It was, well, we need to convince them that through our just renderings and drawings, that we know how this building is going to get put together. And so that's where the F9 principles, there's 9 of them, started to be born. And one of them is model it like it's built. And it's because it's like, okay, we're going to prove to you, we're going to model every single, the very first real commission we got was a duplex in Golden, Colorado. And so we were legal to practice, as far as we didn't present ourselves as architects, none of that. And that's how we convinced that owner to hire us, as we go, we're going to model it like it's built. Like, and then I did play up, I'm 43. I have now had a hammer in my hand for 30 years, since 13. Prior, I wanted to be a builder first, before I was an architect, so I could at least talk about and convince them, like, I know how to pick up hammers. Like I have been a framer, and now we're going to carry that into modeling like it's built. So that really helped us have a good base for convincing people at a very young age. I was 25, he was 23, to trust us with their buildings and working in that kind of a way. And it's carried through all the way for those 17 years. Like our staff, it's almost like watching little Lance and little Al when we have brand new staff come from the university, and we'll go, don't worry, you're going to model it like it's built. It's the best. One of the best strategies that we found, to where it's like they start to better understand what they're drawing and how it's going to get built, because it's like in between the two. Because I'm speaking to what you said earlier, Dave, about that, where that other architect you were talking about, he's like, why am I drawing what I don't know how it's even going together? It's like it's something that really we should probably talk about more in this profession at an early age with people.
Well, just to geek out real quick, what software are you guys using?
We use Revit.
So I've always loved Revit for that reason, because you can't, if you cheat, it's really messy.
Yeah, you don't let it lie. That's what we're saying. Like, we're very not to get like esoterical, but I'm like very much a John 8:32 guy. The truth will set you free, and that's what I tell my staff too. I'm like, hey, we tell the truth at this firm, like, even if it hurts.
Yeah.
We don't let the model lie. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to build a wall to support a floor, right? Or figure out how that's all going to connect. So much of it is about the relationship and the connections of it, which coming up now, I'm getting all software geeky, but coming up in AutoCAD, and I enjoyed AutoCAD, and I was an AutoCAD rock star. Like I was AutoCAD national champion in high school. I got the trophy.
Are you serious?
Yeah. It's pretty sweet. I was just rocking CAD, and
that's wild.
Early on, I was using the DOS version too. And then,
oh my goodness,
the first firm I worked for, they started adopting Revit, and Brad, who introduced me to it, has been on this show, and so is one of the early Revit developers before Autodesk bought it. But I loved it because we were literally building something. It was like a little. I think we use a lot of SketchUp, and to me, that's like model railroad building, which I really love too. But then now we get real, and we're actually trying to figure out how this thing is going together sequentially, and then it generates, 2-dimensional drawings from that. That's how we translate stuff. But anyway, I love the model at how it's built, and probably the other side of that. I think you posted something about this is when the building looks better than the renderings. Was that you or something?
I'm not sure. One other thing I wanted to mention too, Dave, to kind of go back to the ignorance is bliss thing on the business side. So I gave you a good architecture example and design example of like, oh, that ignorance ended up kind of being great for us in that way. on the business side of things, I'm not sure we would have experimented as much if we would have had an institutional background. And I know that because I have friends who are some of my best friends. They're listeners of the show now because they finally started practice. They finally started their own business, is what I'm saying, or their own practice. Because most founders are actually 43 right now. Well, we've been doing it for 17 years. And they started their practices, and a couple of them have come from very corporate, institutional, entrenched firms. And one of them came down like to the office 3 years ago, and we went out camping and hiking and stuff, and had like a little sort of retreat as they were just starting they were just starting it. And he kept asking me about and he even shadowed us one day, me and Al. We were we shot a commercial. It was pretty awesome. My best friend's like a videographer. His name is Bill. And so like Nate palled around with us the whole time. And we went to like different houses we were building. They were in different stages of construction. It was like it was a pretty cool day. And Nate was just asking me the kind of questions he was asking me is like, well, don't I need this paperwork and like this protocol and like the company manual, and just like, I go, you're going to get analysis paralysis. I go, you got to understand, Al and I are like renegades. Okay. We started when way too young. We were unlicensed. We had to navigate. We had to figure out how to team up with other architects while to continue basically getting the mentorship and the hours to then be able to take the tests. I go, we have done everything the opposite way for like the first 10 years that most architects do. Like, we embraced advertising way back when it was taboo. Now you have folks like Tyler Suamala and business coaches within the architecture industry who are like saying stuff that we've been doing for a long time. I'm so glad they are out there doing that. But that was the business component side of it, of like, oh, it's kind of good. And there was many ideas that we tried that, seasoned architects would be like, that's a bad idea business wise. And like, they'd ended up being a bad idea, but that's okay. I mean, I'm okay with that. But there was a lot of them unconventional ones that ended up being really, really good ones, to where then those seasoned architects came back to us and go like, I see you. Now you're really visible because of this. And I wish I was doing what you're doing. And a lot of it is like the media attention. Like, we'll go back to our alma mater, and they'll go North Dakota State, and I'll meet up with colleagues, upperclassmen, maybe a couple years above us and below us. But there's a lot of us that are entrepreneurial, and they'll go like, how do you guys stay in the media so much? And I'm like going, wait a minute, us? Like, I don't think we do, So, but I think it's because of the unconventional tactics we've taken.
Well, I think yes, but it's also just because you're doing stuff, right? It starts, and I've had a couple of guests on where we've talked about just that. Even this show, for example, right? Or you guys doing a show, like, yeah, you can think about it all day long, but you just have to go do it. You have to put it out there. You have to put yourselves out there. And I think that's a hard part. And as I've aged, certainly in when I was in my 20s, I was a little bit more, pedal to the metal and just go, and I'll figure it out. I'm not worried about anything. But there's so many people like yourself or Tom Rozak, or a lot of people have had on the show, that just make it seem so easy, right? It's like, well, you just go do it, right? Yeah. But the amount of work that you put into doing that, and learning, and like a sense of curiosity and just wanting to improve, and then take that in and build upon it, like, that's kind of the fundamental piece, don't you think?
100%. Yeah, exactly. You just got to do it. You got to just try it. That's what I'm saying. The analysis paralysis. Look, and by the way, sometimes I touch the stove too quickly, or whatever the metaphor I'm trying to come up with, where I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have jumped into that too quick. But here I am. Now I got to swim. Now I got to swim. It is what it is. There's no perfect time.
Yeah.
Other than now. I mean, like, yeah.
Yeah, I've never been best at timing, but that's okay, right? But yeah, I have a brother an older brother, who started an environmental company in Virginia. And when I started LivCo, he kind of gave me a piece of advice where I'm asking him all these questions. He's like, I don't know. Worst case, you learn something. I was like, that's pretty good advice, right? Nobody's going to die. Yeah?
It's going to die, yeah. Yeah, I had a guy on my show yesterday. He was saying he was an architect and he's an entrepreneur. It's going to be a great episode. He reached out. That's a good example. Like he reached out and I went, oh yeah, for sure. I think people reaching out to shows like this, they are enthusiastic. They want to do it, so they're going to be not afraid in front of a camera and a microphone. So there's something even about just you and I right now. If we were recording my show, and you know how it works, is like we're going to record, then I'm going to do just some slight edits at the beginning and end, and it'll get published, but it's not live. But it still feels live to rookies, and they get real afraid of it. But what the guy was saying yesterday was, he goes, there's no perfect time to invest. Like you just incrementally do it. And I go, boy, that has been a hard one for me to learn. I just had this conversation with, I can't even remember who it was, separately with the investing, where I'm like, it took me 43 years to learn. Like you just put in a little money every day and you win more if you do that consistently, right? Consistency over everything, I think, goes a long way.
Absolutely. Well, in the world of business, obviously, you guys had some big ideas, some entrepreneurial thinking, some opportunities that presented themselves and that you guys got from there. So, how did you learn the business of it? Were you, peer groups, or was it, Enoch's podcast? How did you guys kind of figure that? Because nobody teaches you that in school. Nobody teaches you that at an architecture firm. That's for sure. At least I never got that. So how did you? It's not even really part of any of the licensing. It isn't. There's no.
It's not part of the licensing.
No.
Yeah.
There's no model. Nobody shows you
Yeah.
a business model for how to operate this stuff. So
And-
how did you guys figure that out?
And like at best, like you said, in school, you're maybe going to take a 2-credit seminar during your grad years.
Mhm.
You're gonna forget that. And who's teaching it anyway, professor? It's probably not somebody who's been in the trenches and tell you all the war stories and all that stuff, like we are on Inside the Firm. It was a combination. It was actually a combination. I want to give some grace to the schmucks that laid me off, who couldn't run a good, successful, sustainable business practice or architecture practice, and they know that business doesn't even exist anymore, because that's how bad it was run. Very good architects, don't get me wrong, award-winning, nationally recognized, on television, all the amazing stuff, but just could not run a business practice. I specifically chose to, even my first internship, and then the one real job in Boulder after graduation, was picking a small firm. So I would learn by osmosis. I would hear in the open studio as much as I could about business if it would be let out. I got to go to a few sales meetings, because they actually were leaning on me at the end, to try to move in a direction where we're going after like public projects and a bunch of CAD modeling things and everything like that. So I strangely got a little bit at the end with those guys. Prior to that, like when I was 18, 19, 20, I had a few really small companies that I had started, and they were just like handyman companies. It was called like Cayko Construction, Cayko Construction. And I was able to win a few little projects here and there and learn how to advertise. Just simple stuff like, oh yeah, put an ad in the paper. Wow, I got a call. The first job I took when I did that, when I was like 19, was I built these stairs outside of a mobile home for like nothing. It was like $150. And the lady really liked it. She goes, oh, by the way, that's my rental. I have a house over here. I need an art studio. She was an artist. She goes, I need it kind of redone. That filled the rest of my summer. And I learned how to do it. I learned how to like estimate time. I leaned on one of my very early mentors that I got when I was 13. I think that was probably the catalyst for it all. When I quit working on the farm that summer and decided to go into construction, I called my dad's best friend. His name was Bruce. And I was a very hard worker for him. So, and I had like my head on straight, to the point where he pulled me aside about halfway through the summer and gave me my first business lesson. And it was the multiply factor. I was like, he goes, I'm paying you $7.25 an hour. What do you think I'm charging the clients? I go, $7.25 an hour. And he laughed at me, and I was embarrassed. And then he explained, and he goes, no, 3 to 4 times that. And I said, isn't that immoral? And then he laughed again. And then he explained the whole model. And all of a sudden I had the rich dad, poor dad experience. I didn't know it at the time. I didn't know it until I was about 33, 34, because that's when I read that book. But in hindsight and looking back, I went, oh, Bruce had no anxiety around money. He was the first entrepreneur I got that I was able to ever even know. And my dad, who raised me, God bless him, who just had the steady job, was the poor dad. And I realized why I then, in hindsight, like so at the end of the summer, Bruce pulled me aside one more time and he goes, what do you want to be when you get big? And I go, I don't want your company, but I want to do what you do. Like, how do I do that? And he goes, every summer now, you need to go work a different trade until you've worked about all of them. And I took it like so serious. So next summer, I did not work for Bruce. I worked for a different company and we did framing or something, and then windows the next, blah, blah, blah. And that's why I wanted to be a builder first. So that was part of it, for sure. And then it was just learned like on the job training. One point of information that was really important for us figuring out, like how much do we, once we now started out our business, how much do we charge? What's the market like is, and some people do not like this story, but business is war. Like it is. I don't care. Yes, Dave and I are friends. Yes, I am friends with many other architects, but it is war at the end of the day, right? Like it is me protecting my family and my employees with beating the other competitors. It just is. So it's like, that is true. We put out a fake ad when we first started on Craigslist. This was 2010, a long, long time ago. And we pretended we were landowners in the mountains. We were going to build a 2,000 square foot cabin. And we solicited proposals from architects and designers. And we got about over 100 submissions or something like that, because the economy was so bad.
Right.
We fed those into a database. This was before ChatGPT. So we had to do the manual work and figured out like the average rate, and seeing if like that would sustain us and how much times, how long things would take. And then we were able to, because I had a little bit of proposals from those other architects that I worked for before, you got access to them, cobble together our first kind of proposals and stuff. And that's how we set our base. So it's a combination of all of that. I didn't start listening to Enoch and Mark until we were a couple years into the business, to be honest with you, because I think they started. I know like Evan Troxel, he started in 2012. So some of those podcasts actually didn't start until a couple years after we started in 2010.
Yeah, I always felt like, and again, we kind of started a little bit entrepreneurial and opportunistic and fringe from the regular architectural community, but I never felt like there was a whole lot of sharing going on between firms. So it would be fascinating to see that database and the range of
oh, it was
services
crazy.
proposed. It had to just be nuts, because there's no consistency.
It was. I remember it distinctly. It was a 10x. It was between $25 an hour and $250 an hour in 2010. It was a 10x, right? And I think our first billable rate was like $40 an hour. So I want to tell everybody, like, we were not undercutting the market. We were just doing reasonable fees for reasonable work at that time. Now our fees are way higher, right? I mean, we're established and all that other stuff. And our giving back was, okay, we're going to tell you how to do this for 10 years for free. Like, I don't know how else to further strengthen the profession for people with no connections other than kind of laying it bare like we've done in that way. So I don't think we hurt the profession.
Well, and on that note, and this may be like totally in my head, but I feel like a lot of firms, not a lot, but some small firms that start are spinoffs, basically moonlighting firms from a larger firm. And they establish a relationship with a client who has ongoing work, and they like working with that person. So then that former employee creates their own firm and says, I'm going to work directly for them. And they feel like they have this stability. But what they maybe don't realize is the only reason that person is working with you is because you're a quarter of the cost of the fancy office, right? So then you have to figure out how that might be a way to start, but then you have to figure out what your brand really is and what your value add is, and how you should be getting the same rate as the place you used to work because you're providing the same service, right? And then see if they're still going to pay you. I don't know. Like, that's just, I mean, that's how Frank Lloyd Wright got started, right? It's kind of a funny evolution in the world of architecture, and how a lot of people start firms is just, a relationship with a client that starts to build them out. We
Yeah.
we were way weirder, where it was, foreclosure rehab work and just trying to figure out how to get involved as a builder, um, and then start to understand the business of that. Um, so on, because that's a cool evolution there. So in F9, what do you guys look like today? Like what's your project mix? Are you guys doing a lot of service architecture? Are you doing, architecture and build? Is it a little everything? Are you doing development? What's your staff look like? Give us kind of the picture of F9.
We've capped at 12. I really have been emphasizing that a lot this year.
That's interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So we learned from some of our colleagues, our engineering colleagues. I watched 2 different firms get started and spurred, just like you're saying. They split off from bigger firms, and then all of a sudden, there were two different kinds of engineering firms in the Denver metro. And one of them started exactly the same year we did, in the exact same way, 2 people. And then the other firm was a spur off about 7 years ago or something, 1 person. But what happened, and they kind of did the exact same stuff we did, where we're like, oh wow, we're hearing the clients that hate the lack of communication from these big firms that we broke off from, lack of attention, just too big.
Mm-hmm.
And so they did the rapid phone calls back, text, emails, just high level customer service. Everybody in the metro flocked to them, of course. And then they just skyrocketed in growth, got past 12, and I swear, then both firms just went for a B or C level customer service. And Al and I kept looking at Al, like, I was like, because I often say in the firm, once is an anomaly, twice is a coincidence, 3 times a pattern. I'm like, we don't want to be the pattern here. I am convinced we don't want to ever go past 12. We even did an episode about this like 6 weeks ago or something like that. And I think it's called like the Dirty Dozen. And then I got kind of esoteric on air, because I was like, oh yeah, 12 apostles, 12 ribs, 12 astracal. I'm like, we gotta just a baker's, 12 dozen eggs. We gotta be 12 inches. We gotta be done. We're good. So we've capped at 12. We have 9 architects, 3 interior designers, and our mix right now is, I would say, well, multifamily is it's coming back a little. It's usually split in thirds. A third of what we do is middle to very, very high end residential stuff, like tech billionaires in Boulder type of stuff, single family homes. And then the middle is multifamily. And then the other last third is boutique, commercial, and industrial work. Out of that architectural matrix, Al and I only build each maybe 4 to 5 projects per calendar year, out of maybe on a bad year, 3 or 4 dozen projects we bring in. On a good year, maybe 5 or 6 dozen projects. So that's that. And then development wise, I'm sitting in the condo that Al and I designed, built, and developed. I live in it. My work, I have a 24 foot commute every day over to the office, across the alley. And then we retained the unit behind us as a rental investment property. We rent it out to this awesome single mom. And so we paused after that first big development. I got burnout. I kind of took a lot of time off that next year or two, and then COVID hit. And but we kept building. So what was really born out of that was F14, which is our construction company, because I just couldn't let go of all of the time and effort that went into getting that Class B license. I was like, this has to, I feel like it has to go forward. And so we started flipping architecture projects that we wanted in the matrix to construction projects. And now the company has fully matured. We're at year 7 of that 14. I'm a big numbers guy, if you can't tell. Like, year 7 is meaningful. So we're coming out of the startup phase. We've cycled through different ways to make F14 work. We used to have an actual construction crew, carpenters, no more. It just wasn't worth it. And then we used to have superintendents, wasn't worth it. That's where then we recalibrated and retooled and brought in and established an interiors office with an F9 who takes at me and Al will take everything from dirt to drywall. And then all of a sudden interiors comes in and they start doing a ton of construction administration. And then F9 builds F14 for it. And this ecosystem we've created allowed us to avoid 2 layoffs last year. And we're huge advocates of that on the show and to the public of like, you can create a sustainable architecture practice if you just start building only a few of your projects, because you're extending that pipeline, you're extending shovel ready cash flow projects into it. Development is in the last, that's like the last thing I'll say here is about where we're at is I actually got back in the real estate development game just a couple months ago, but it was by proxy of this amazing project that we're a part of. For me, it's like a personal legacy project in the town that is very near and dear to me, that I've raised my children in, raised a family, and that I love, Longmont, Colorado. In the downtown on the 7th Avenue block, there was this 87-year-old building. It was a pawn shop. And well, first it was the original Safeway grocery store for the city of Longmont 87 years ago. And over the course of those 87 years, it's been like a tire shop, and then a service garage, auto shop, and most recently a real blight downtown. This real ugly pawn shop. Nobody wants that. I mean, frankly, especially in like Shishi, Boulder County. I mean, we're kind of like a little California here. So, you know, we need avocado toast is what I'm getting at, Dave.
Oh, yeah. Yes, I think it's changed a little bit in the past 20 years. Yes.
Yeah. So the developer approached us. It would have been our second project with him as architects and builders in town. And we didn't even have any high expectations for the project from the beginning. But the more we got into it, so the original scope was just like white box it, start attracting commercial tenants. So we started heading in that direction. And as we started heading that direction, and we got our first LOI, and then our second LOI, and the first one was a burger and bar restaurant, Gaya Masala, and then the second one was a Cooper wine bar. It's very shishi, like the wine bar in Boulder County. And all of a sudden, we started to mitigate in the building, asbestos removal, and take it apart. And the bones that were revealed from it were just incredible. We have these amazing bow trusses and patinas on the inside. It's like we put in all kinds of new storefront on the south side. The whole thing is transformed. We think it's going to win some urban revitalization projects. So we're the architects, we're the builders. Towards the end of the project, then the developer, who again, second time we worked with him, approached me to be an investor, and showed me the investment returns and all of that. And it's amazing returns. I couldn't turn it down, so I ended up becoming a 25% owner in the project, and that's our latest real estate development. And I think that was sort of the missing part of it. Real estate development takes a whole nother level of examination that honestly, and also just constantly beating everybody up so you can make the deal work.
Yeah, it's all about the land purchase, right?
Yep. And
That's
Al and
fundamental.
Yep. And Al and I, even though we have our own successful real estate development that we wore all three hats on, I do think that's where we needed somebody like David. And that's the first name of this developer partner I have. Is he has what I don't have, and I have what he doesn't have. And I'm really grateful for him in my life now. And so now I'm convinced that he and I are actively looking at a third project in the same kind of vein. We really like just taking downtown buildings and rehabbing them and making them happen, because I love that stuff.
So, besides bringing money to the table on it, what is your other involvement in it? Obviously, you have an eye and a sense of it. And are you also using, F9 resources? Are you guys earning sweat equity, or is F9 the paid architect? How does that?
We're always paid. We're always paid for like once a building is secured or something like that.
Okay.
With David. But I am now, since we have a deeper, lengthier relationship with David, what is beautiful is like we can do some real quick feasibility studies for them, and I will just chalk it up to doing a cost of business. And some architects might not like to hear that, but it's like, hey, we're advocating for something much bigger. First of all, like to wear more hats and create better, longer, sustainable businesses. So take it for what it's worth. It's usually like a 2 to 4 hour exercise. It's not a big deal.
Right.
Like it's just like David will say, like, here's the shell. How many tenants do you think we can fit in here? Run it back to him, give him some pro forma work, give him something to chew on, and then he can start. And then for me on the builder side of things, and he'll be like, how much do you think this is going to cost? Well, I can go back to our two construction budgets that we just had with you, David. No problem. Remember, here's what the per square cost was on unit 1, which was a restaurant, unit 2, which is whatever. And we can really start honing in on the rapid, on where if this deal is even worth going after or not right away. Because what's the risk if David didn't have somebody like that for us? Well, he would be without a valuable resource and maybe go and look for another resource. So we're happy to be that resource for him. We weren't right away. I mean, I will say, like, we definitely did this sort of like, no, you gotta give us a deposit. Like we're gonna bill against it and stuff like that. So I still think people should be doing stuff like that. Where just if they can get on an hourly rate for something, very quick but after you have an established relationship and you see the bigger picture and the money is way different at that level. Once you really see returns on being like part of the development team, it's just way different. And our staff loves it anyway. We really lean into these older buildings now, because I think that's where the market's actually headed is. I'm not sure we're building much new stuff. I know that's what's set you up for success is leaning into that for a long time. We're big believers in it too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a whole different ball game, but and niche in a lot of ways, right? Because there's so many unknowns that until you build that wealth of experience and that ability to visualize and envision something, how you can repurpose, a split level home. It's like, oh my God, how can that ever be good? I'm like, no, we can make it good, right? Well, on that note, I know we're running a little long as usual, but my favorite segment of the show is the predicting of the future, which you're talking about a little bit here in terms of, the adaptive reuse. You guys have done so many diverse projects. Everything you guys do is beautiful, first of all. Thank you. Really, really wonderful work. But everything from, urban infill to, repurposing older structures to just unbelievable modern mountain homes. So what do you guys see in terms of the future of construction in our industry, leveraging technology, modular building? What do you see coming? You're a forward thinking guy.
Yeah, we try to be cutting edge but not bleeding edge. We'll look at the bleeding edge. A good example of that is our lidars. So we used to farm it all out because it was way too expensive. It used to be like $25K. This was like 6-7 years ago. If you want to buy the machine,
right?
So we were watching. We would rent it. We would do the lidar. It still made all kinds of financial sense to do it that way. Then all of a sudden, they came out with, I think, the Matterport 3 or whatever, and it's
like $3,000, right?
Yep. It was 7 when we bought it. So how dare you?
Okay. But yeah, sorry. It's like a plasma. It's like the $30,000 25-inch plasma TV.
Yep. Right. That's been a big game changer for us. So that's a really good example of just watching the bleeding edge, and then when it gets to cutting, you're like, boom, take advantage of it and go from there. That thing has paid itself off. It's still running over and over and over and over. We did the same thing with the iPad. One of the things we're seeing now is that we're seeing the virtual walkthroughs be a big deal for people. There's 2 shops in North and South Denver. One's north, one's south, where you can go and you can, I can't, it's like $1,000 or something, but the value you can tell a client, you know this, David, a million times. Not all of them. Some of them really get it, but like, walk them through the floor plans, show them a 3D, show them an elevation. The heads are nodding. Then you go to build it and they go, I had no idea those windows were that big. Like, we talked about it. Right. So I think this is going to help bridge, hopefully, making even more and better decisions before heading into construction. So what we've done with our design build projects lately, Al just did this. He's building a brand new house in Boulder County. and they did a virtual walkthrough. So you could project the whole building from the drawings, stand next to the counters, and all of that. That's been a huge one. So I think those technologies are where it's heading. Typologies, adaptive reuse. I'm just so convinced. I have a meeting tomorrow for another building downtown on Main Street. It's on the 4th block. A developer from New York's going to be there, and he wants to do mixed use. And I'm like, this is the stuff that Jane Jacobs has screamed about since the 60s. I am just like all in with my heart and soul about stuff like that. I understand that everybody, especially a lot of people when they come out of school, I did it too, where like I want to put my mark on the built world. And so the first thing the real like candy that you're looking at is like, oh, it's a greenfield, modern house, big acreage. Yeah, I love those too. But they're going to become more rare and rare and rare. They just are, especially where I live, where they restrict what you can build so much. So leaning into going, yep, I like doing historical stuff. I like doing existing buildings. How can I make this work? Is a huge one. And multifamily across the nation, I think with the interest rates, it's going to just continue to kind of be real soft and hard to get back. So lean into all adaptive reuse, I think, for the next, I'd say decade. And I think you're going to be set up for success.
Love it, man. Well, Lance, I feel like this was too short, so we'll have to do it again.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts for any crazy entrepreneurs out there thinking about going on their own, designing, building, developing? Any words of wisdom from Lance?
Well, the word was, so one thing you asked about is your goal. Did we join any mentorship groups or find a mentor or anything like that? We did find a mentor very early on in our career. His name is Jerry Boland. He's an architect. He's the one that really helped us cross the finish line and would even be willing to become the prime on our very early projects. So we legally then were, the sub, and then could do all the type A and type O settings and everything with NCARB. Find a mentor very early on if you can. Don't be afraid to reach out to extremely successful people, and you'll find one. I guarantee it. The most wealthy and extremely successful people in my life are usually the most generous. Like there's actually not this idea that that I've seen so far where they're just like so selfish and not generous. I'm always surprised.
I think you're 1,000,000,000% correct on that. And part of it is you have people that have a wealth of knowledge and want to share that, and their children don't listen to them. So they would love to mentor. So I totally agree. I felt like, in my life and reaching out to accomplished people, they love to share and they love to help. Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's good stuff, man. Well, I appreciate it. How are folks going to find you? What's the best place to find Lance and F9? And
well, definitely go to insidethefirmpodcast.com. Try a few episodes out. Check out Dave. Just Google Dave Pollard Inside the Firm podcast, and he'll be there.
There's way better episodes than that. I promise
you can go to f9productions.com. See what we're doing architecture wise, building wise, design development wise. Sign up for our newsletter. It comes out once a quarter. And then I will link in with anybody. I love LinkedIn and actually I like Elon Musk, but I'm also like hey Elon, I'm happy to be cringe on LinkedIn. It's okay. I am Brian. Lean into being cringe on LinkedIn, you silly man. So link in with me. Lance, last name Cayko, Cayko. I'm the only one.
Yeah, awesome stuff on LinkedIn. For sure. Lance, again, thanks, man. We'll talk very soon, and good luck with everything.
Thanks, brother. Pleasure to be on the show.
Cheers.